People versus Robert Durst. Mr. Durst is present with his lawyers, Mr. DeGuerin, Mr. Chesnoff, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Bailey, and Mr. Henderson, Mr. Miata, and Mr. Milius for the people. It's now time for the redirect examination of the defendant, Mr. Durst, by the lawyer, Mr. DeGuerin. Mr. DeGuerin, you may commence.
Good morning, Bob.
Good morning.
I want to turn first to the area of questioning on cross-examination about your interview with Mr. Lewin in New Orleans. And first I want to ask you about the conditions you came from that morning to start the interview with Mr. Lewin.
Objection, Your Honor, that's outside the scope of cross. That area was not.
So, would you please describe what happened to you when you hit the jail after your arrest at the J.W. Marriott, the Orleans Parish Prison?
I was transported from the Marriott Hotel in a police car, handcuffed to Orleans Parish Prison. I'd been in prisons and jails, probably 8 or 9 different ones. The standard procedure when you get to a new prison or jail is they bring you to the property room. They ask you to undress, and they give you the clothes that the facility provides.
All right, were you asked to then strip off your street clothes to undress?
That's correct, and that's what I did.
So, you said that the procedure usually is for you to be issued jail clothes. Were you issued jail clothes?
Yes, I said that to the 2 guards. Aren't you going to give me clothes? And one of them said, you're not going to need clothes, Durst. We are going to throw away the key.
So did you get any jail clothes?
I got no jail clothes. I was transported naked into a cell that had a toilet, a sink, and 2 metal bunks. There was no mattress on either bunk. I spent the night curled up on one of the metal bunks.
Tell us about the temperature. This was early or mid-March in New Orleans. What was the temperature in the cell?
Probably in the 50s.
All right, so the next morning, when you were summoned, tell the jury how that happened.
Well, I must have been very, very, very tired, because I don't remember falling asleep or waking up at all until I heard a male voice shout my last name. I got up off the metal bunk, walked to the front of the cell, and he was pushing clothes through the porthole, and he told me that I had a legal visit.
Had you called or tried to call a lawyer before
I
that?
had.
Who did you speak to? Not what was said, but who did you speak to?
I spoke to Steve Rabinowitz. He was the only criminal lawyer's cell phone that I was familiar with, or that I remembered, because he had done something for me recently.
All right. And did you have my number?
I asked Steve Rabinowitz to contact you,
All right.
tell them I'd been arrested in New Orleans.
So when the deputy simply said you have a legal visit, what were you expecting?
I was expecting to see a lawyer that was either hired by Steve Rabinowitz or you, who practiced in New Orleans.
Okay, now, what was going through your mind as to what was facing you in Louisiana at that time?
Well, ex-cons like me, whenever there's an article about prisons, I tend to read it because I am naturally curious. Every article I ever saw that talked about prison conditions said that Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola is the worst, or almost the worst. That it is the filthiest, that it has the smallest possible budget, and it has the most violence of any other prison in the country. I knew that I'd been arrested in the state of Louisiana for having guns and drugs, and being a felon. That meant I would definitely go to prison. I would have no case.
You would definitely go to prison. You had no what?
Well, they had found marijuana in my hotel room, and they'd found a gun. So Louisiana state law, I knew, for a felon to have a gun and drugs would be an automatic guilty verdict. There'd be no way I could fight it.
All right. I'm having a little difficulty hearing, and I'm wondering whether the jury's able to hear. Okay. So,
Did we decide that the jury can hear me?
yes,
or
I think
not?
they all nodded they can hear.
The opposite.
Oh,
We're having difficulty, that's what you asked.
Okay,
Okay.
having difficulty hearing.
I'm
So
sorry.
let's, maybe we can adjust the microphone. And Mr. Durst, do your best to keep your voice up.
I think part of the issue was hearing Mr. DeGuerin.
Okay, then keep your voice up also, Mr. DeGuerin. You have no microphone, so you're at a disadvantage. So try to project.
I feel like I've been at a disadvantage for several months, Your Honor.
Yeah. So yeah, you know how to project.
I'll do my best.
Now you sound great. Go ahead.
So, not to repeat, but what was your fear?
I would be in Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola, for the rest of my life.
How long did you believe you had to live?
2 clinics in Houston had examined me when I applied for life insurance, and they both concluded that it was unlikely I would live more than 5 years.
That's 6 years ago, and you're still hanging on, right?
Yes, but I had an operation for cancer of my bladder.
I'm going to ask you about that in just a moment. But let's stick to the subject right now that I want to inquire of you about. When you learn, when you're brought into the room and you learn that it's not your lawyer, it's a prosecutor, Mr. Lewin, and 2 detectives, what did you think?
I thought, when they told me they were from LA, that these guys could get me transported to LA quite quickly.
did you, when you say you thought they were from LA, I'm sure that everybody understands. You mean Los Angeles, California, right?
Correct.
LA is abbreviation for Louisiana.
Right.
LA.
Also Lower Alabama, it turns out. Your Honor.
And other things, but Los Angeles, he knew.
Well, I'll write that one down.
So, as the interrogation or the interview went on, what did you seek to do?
I attempted to make it reasonable for John Lewin and his associates to conclude that I was willing to make pretty much any deal they offered.
And not to be obdurate about this, but why did you think that making a deal of some kind, any kind, with the prosecutors from Los Angeles would benefit you in your situation that you found yourself in?
Well, the California prison system is known for treating its inmates like human beings. If I was going to live for 5 years, I'd far prefer to do it in the California prison system than in the Louisiana state prison system.
You've said before, and I'll ask you again, would you have pled guilty to practically anything to get out of there?
I would have pled guilty to killing Susan Berman, to killing Kathy Durst, to killing Martin Luther King, to killing John Lennon, to killing Jack Kennedy.
Mr. Lewin, in his cross-examination, asked some questions about giving details. Did you think that you would have to give details in order to plead guilty, or even no contest?
I did everything I could to get them interested in making a deal with me.
All right. Now I want to talk about your state of mind then and your medical condition then. What was your medical condition?
Well, I think I stated this at the beginning of my examination, but I have 2 medical conditions that affect everything I do all day, every day. One is hydrocephalus, which means I have no balance. The way God made us, if we lean
Objection
too far
outside the
left,
scope.
Oral.
Go ahead. You may go ahead.
if I lean too far forward or back or left or right, the body naturally corrects for it. In my case, I have to think about it and do something to fix it. The other one that I deal with all day, every day, is called COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It covers everything from a minor dose of bronchitis, which you can live with, to emphysema, which you cannot live with. When I inhale air I don't remove enough oxygen. My lungs don't remove enough oxygen. So I end up breathing through my mouth frequently. Then there's a whole bunch of things which affect me, but they're in the background, so I don't know about them. High blood pressure, osteoporosis, which means my bones are fragile, neuropathy of my right leg under my knee. I've had 2 cancer operations.
Okay, let me ask you about those, and I'll cover first.
Objection, relevance also
Offer
outside
proof.
the scope.
Offer proof on the cancer and other conditions. You're going into that. That leads to, why is it relevant?
As it might affect his memory and ability to testify, Your Honor.
Outside the scope, Your Honor, as well.
Oh, really?
What I started to say, Bob, I'm going to go into those conditions that you had and what had happened to you health-wise as that might affect your ability, your appearance today, your ability to testify, your ability to remember things. And so I want to ask you about that. Mr. Lewin has also asked you about, you seem to have a very specific memory about some things and not about other things. Do you know why that is?
No,
All right. Let's talk about the conditions you already had when you were in New Orleans. You mentioned hydrocephalus. When was that first diagnosed?
well, off and on for most of my life, I've had balance issues, and one of the things that causes balance issues is hydrocephalus. In 2012, they decided to do the operation for hydrocephalus, which involves drilling a hole through the scalp into the brain and running a line down to the stomach to drain off excess fluid. The doctors are all very concerned about doing that operation because it's known that frequently it messes up things in the brain.
Okay. Now, also, Mr. Lewin asked you about faking, and he put some things on the screen about you talking on the phone about faking a medical condition. Is your hydrocephalus faking? Are you faking your hydrocephalus?
I don't think it's possible to fake hydrocephalus. Like for me to walk from here over there would be like somebody trying to walk on a high wire. I could probably get there without falling down if I balanced all the way.
On your right wrist, you wear, the jail has given you something. What is that?
It's a yellow thing that doesn't come off. It says fall risk. It's stuck.
Okay. I think it's been visible throughout the trial, so don't worry about it. All right. The record couldn't see what you were doing, but you were trying to get the band on your wrist to show, correct?
Yeah, to move down my wrist.
Okay, that's all right. There it is.
Yeah, there it is.
And quite visible is something on your head, on the right side of your skull. What is that?
That's called a shunt. That's when they drilled into my head in 2012 and ran a line from my brain to my stomach.
Is that shunt adjustable?
Yes, it sounds a little bit like a Manchurian Candidate, but there's a magnet in my head, and a neurologist who has the correct magnet can open and close my shunt.
All right. Are you faking that condition?
I don't think that's possible to fake.
Let's talk about other conditions that have affected your health and perhaps your memory.
Up until 2007,
Yes, 2007. Tell us what happened in 2007.
I had my regular annual physical, and I was told that the biopsy had come back positive, and that I had cancer of the esophagus. The platinum operation, the platinum way to deal with cancer of the esophagus, if it's caught really early, is basically to cut out the esophagus. The stomach is very flexible. So what they do is they remove the esophagus, which in someone my size is about a foot long, and going through my throat to my stomach. They remove the esophagus and they stretch the stomach up to my throat. So my stomach ends up in my chest cavity, as opposed to where my stomach started.
So did you have that operation? Was your esophagus removed?
Yes, and it's a major, major operation. Because if you do it, they have to open you up in the front and in the back. And two doctors have to get their hands inside of you to do the procedure. As a result, I was in the hospital for 26 days on morphine. When I was dismissed, the surgeon said that people who spend, people who spend as much time as I had on morphine tend to think more slowly than they did before the operation. Not that I would forget things, but I would have to go over things much more carefully, things that I remembered.
All right. So that was in 2007, 26 days on morphine after your operation. You've told us about the brain surgery in 2012. Did you have a serious operation in 2011?
Yes.
What was it?
Before they decided, they thought I had hydrocephalus, but since that's a major iffy operation, they also saw that my spinal cord was bent and was impinging on the spinal canal.
Now your spinal cord goes all the way from the back of your skull all the way to the bottom of your body. What part of your spinal column was involved?
In my neck. So they did what's called a spinal fusion, where they opened up my neck in the back and they put in what's called rods and cones. I think I had 6 rods and cones inserted in 2011. That did not solve my balance problem. So in 2012, they did the hydrocephalus operation that I described. Then in 2015...
I'll ask you about that also. So, at the time of your interview with Mr. Lewin in March of 2015, you had already had the 26 days on morphine for your esophageal cancer surgery. You'd had the first spinal fusion in 2011, and then you'd had your 2012 brain surgery for the hydrocephalus. Is that right?
Correct.
After Mr. Lewin's interrogation or interview in March of 2015, have you been out of jail since then? Have you been in custody since then?
Say that again.
Yes, I'm sorry, it's a long question. Have you been continuously in custody, either in New Orleans or around the country in order to get to Los Angeles or in Los Angeles County ever since March of 2015?
Yes, March of 2015. I was arrested in New Orleans. And somehow or other, it took 18 months for Los Angeles County to transport me from New Orleans to Los Angeles. And they did it by way of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and Terre Haute, Indiana.
Okay. Now, in fairness, some of that time was spent in Louisiana facing both state and federal charges in Louisiana for the gun and drugs that you were arrested with in March of 2015. Isn't that right?
Yes,
Okay. In fact, while in custody in Louisiana, in federal custody in Louisiana, did you have another operation?
yes.
What was it?
A second, bigger spinal fusion. Seemingly some of the metal that they had put in my neck the first time around had broken apart, and they had to replace it and add additional metal.
Without going into great detail, did you have to go to several different places after you made your agreement with the prosecution in Louisiana?
Yeah, somehow or other, and I still don't understand exactly how it worked. The state of Louisiana dropped all their charges against me, and the federal government charged me with those same things in the federal system. And I did an agreement. I did a plea agreement and agreed to serve 84 months in federal prison. That 84 months expired just this past May.
All right. And to sum it up, was it because of an agreement that your lawyers worked out for you with both the federal prosecutors and the state prosecutors in Louisiana that you would be transferred to Los Angeles to face these charges?
I thought the Los Angeles prosecutors were involved in the agreement, but yes.
Okay. And so eventually you came to Los Angeles. After you got to California, did you have yet another surgery?
Yes, I'm fortunate enough to be getting excellent medical care through the Sheriff's Medical Service Bureau. And I'm housed on the medical floor of Twin Towers 2. It's called the Correctional Treatment Center CTC for short. And since they were monitoring me very carefully, they were able to determine that I had bladder cancer. And USC operated on me in the spring of 2018, successfully removing the bladder cancer.
Since then, have you continued to have bladder problems?
Yes, I wear a diaper most days.
The jury has seen, and everybody's seen, that at times during this trial, you've had a catheter and had a bag by your side. You don't have that now. Is that a result of the bladder cancer?
Yes,
Okay. In recordings that we've heard and that Mr. Lewin has played, both jail recordings, telephone recordings, and so forth, you speak more rapidly. You speak than you do here in court. Is that a fair statement?
I think I speak the same on telephone calls as I do here in court.
Okay, well, that's a difference of opinion we have. At any rate, you speak seemingly deliberately and slowly. Do you know why that is?
I speak as deliberately as possible. I think I speak slowly for two reasons. First, because of what the surgeons in Houston told me after spending 26 days on morphine, I would naturally go much slower. Also, since I have to breathe through my mouth, it's difficult to speak.
And finally, are you hard of hearing, almost deaf?
Yes, I was born with a spasm on the left side of my face, which involved being almost deaf in my left ear. And periodically, my left eye will start blinking rapidly. If I'm aware it's happening, I can stop it. But sometimes I wake up with it.
At times, after being asked a question, at times you refer to the tablet in front of you so that we can get in the record exactly what that is and the jury will be informed. What is that and why do you use that tablet?
Well, the court reporter's sitting behind you. Well, why do I use it?
Yes.
I have difficulty hearing.
Okay. And so that tablet is a real-time printout of what's being said here in court. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. One other question about memory. Mr. Lewin has questioned you about the facts of your mother's death. Your testimony here has been what you remember, is that right?
Correct.
How old were you at the time?
7.
So you're testifying from a 7-year-old's memory of that event, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Lewin asked you about and questioned your statements about Kathy, her drug usage or cocaine usage, and her attendance at a therapy or drug program at Lenox Hill. What was your understanding of when those therapy sessions were held at Lenox Hill?
I think it was 3 or 4 times a week. And they went from either 5 to 8 p.m. or 6 to 9 p.m.
So in the evening.
in the evening.
Was Kathy able to attend to her duties at medical school, the clinics and so forth, in the mornings and afternoons, and still be able to take the therapy?
Objection assumes facts not in evidence.
I think it lacks foundation. Sustained.
Well, do you recall Dr. Peter Wilkes' testimony about Kathy telling him she was taking therapy?
Correct.
Objection misstates the evidence.
Sustained.
Well, do you recall Dr. Peter Wilkes' testimony that Kathy had said to him that she was missing some of her classes because she was taking therapy and going to court?
Objection as to time relevance. In other words, the statement's irrelevant given the time frame that Dr. Wilk is testifying to.
Overruled.
You may answer.
Yes, he said that Kathy had been missing classes, and that Kathy had said the reason she was missing classes was because she was in drug therapy and she was going to court.
That misstates the testimony.
No,
Drug
it's not.
therapy?
It may, but it's not responsive, which is the problem. It's actually not responsive to the question. I'll strike it for that reason. I don't strike answers because they're right or wrong. That's for the jury to decide.
Your Honor,
I'm striking it because it does not respond to the question. It's stricken.
Your Honor, point of
What was your-
clarification, just a point of clarification, if a question is asked
Speaking objection.
about what a witness said and that it's misstated, may I
Mis-
object that that
speaking
misstates the
objection.
testimony?
Right, no, I will overrule your objection. Okay? But then you recross.
My question about Dr. Wilk, do you recall his testimony about what Kathy told him the reasons were she was missing classes?
And she was in a drug therapy program, and that she was going to court in a divorce proceeding with me.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Now,
please?
about
Yes.
the divorce
Are you
proceeding.
objecting that it's non-responsive?
Well, I will raise it outside of jury's presence, Your Honor.
Okay, well, then the answer's going to stand if I'm...
Well, I want to wait, yet there will be an objection, but
I will sustain your objection.
it is non-responsive. It
Okay,
is
stricken.
misstating the.
Stricken. That's not the objection. Let's go sidebar, please. Mr. DeGuerin.
Bob, to be clear,
Well,
Dr. Wilk,
we traded for a player to be anyway.
Good trade. Okay.
to be clear, Dr. Wilk didn't say drug therapy, did he? He simply said therapy.
If that's what he said, that's what he said.
Okay. At any rate, did you and Kathy sometimes meet after her therapy sessions at Lenox Hill?
Yes, frequently she would call me at Riverside Drive and say, I'm going to finish in half an hour. Let's meet at such and such a restaurant.
Was there a restaurant that you and Kathy favored?
Yes, a hamburger place called J.G. Mellon.
That's the initials J, G, and then Melon, M-E-L-O-N?
Correct.
All right. Where is that located? Or was it back then?
Yeah, was it? It's not there anymore. It was on Broadway and 77th Street. And Lenox Hill is on 76th Street. And 37 Riverside Drive is also on 76th Street. So it was an easy walk.
Okay. But Dr. Wilk also said that Kathy used the excuse that she was having to go to court for missing some of her classes. Were there ever any court sessions?
There was never one court, never any court session. Neither her lawyer nor my lawyer ever filed in court for a divorce.
Oh.
And if I may add, Mr. Law& criticized me for sometimes saying we were working on a divorce and sometimes saying we were not working on a divorce. And the thing of it was, to know whether or not we were getting divorced, you'd have to pick a day and a time because it changed repeatedly.
Did you want a divorce?
No.
There's a letter that's in evidence, but on which you said you were moving out of East 86th Street apartment, and that the lawyers were going to take over from there, something like that. Did your lawyer ever file?
No, neither lawyer ever went to court.
Did either lawyer ever file for divorce?
No.
All right. Mr. Lewin also asked you about, and I believe he placed a letter of Kathy's in evidence, or at least showed it to the jury in her application for medical school, in which she makes a statement. I think we can put that on the screen, the medical school application.
We have it only on one screen.
We only have one screen? Well, there's Netflix. We could watch. Okay.
Your Honor, the defense is projecting People's 25A for page 13.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. And we've highlighted this particular sentence. I'll read it for the record. My husband is completely supportive of my ambition to become a doctor. Is that the situation? Was that the situation?
Very, very much so.
Were you proud of Kathy?
Enormously.
I'm jumping around, changing subjects pretty rapidly here. I want to get to the points that I have and get this done. But in the testimony of Detective Struck, there's a part where he mentions, and his notes confirm, that you told him about the jewelry that Kathy ordinarily wore. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
What did she ordinarily wear?
She had various pairs of diamond earrings, and she frequently wore one of her diamond earrings, and she wore her wedding band.
Okay, wedding rings and diamond earrings, correct?
Correct.
Detective Struck also testified that Geraldine McInerney and Mary Hughes found her diamond earrings in the apartment at Riverside Drive. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
What was Kathy's habit and practice about her jewelry?
First thing she would do when she got home was to take off her jewelry and put it in the jewelry box, which she hid in the bureau.
And that jewelry was found by Geraldine McInerney and Mary Hughes at Riverside Drive?
Correct.
As I said, I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'd like to show a letter that Mr. Lewin displayed during one of the past weeks. It's a letter that was found on Susan Berman's computer, dated 5 November, and it's the base number is 037052. People's 313. Thank you very much, Mr. Henderson.
Mr. DeGuerin, dated, you said 5/11/2000, correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes, 5/11/2000. First, I know that the type is pretty small and it's difficult to read, but first, Mr. Durst, is there anywhere in this letter where Susan asks you for more money?
Not that I recall.
Let me just read the first paragraph because it does speak about that. I just wanted you to, dearest Bobby, I just wanted you to know how much I appreciated the 2 times you have helped me, or you helped me, and what a wonderful friend you have been, like the brother I never had over the 30-odd years. I'm so sorry I even had to ask you last time, and ever. Bobby, you know that our friendship was never about money. I'm so sorry that I've been struggling these last few years, and I hope to see you someday again. Now let me stop there. In evidence is several checks that you gave to Susan Berman. But do you agree that this letter did not ask you for more money? It just thanked you for the money you'd sent.
Correct.
Now, I want to show you now what's in evidence as a check that was written by you to Susan after this November 5, 2000 letter to you. May we have that check, please? It's on the screen now. People's 182.
118.
I'm sorry. 118. Thank you. It's just the front of the check. I'll show you the back of the check in a moment. But this check is dated November the 9th. That's 4 days after Susan sent you this email, correct?
Correct.
She didn't ask for any money in this email, did you?
No.
And is there anywhere in this email where she says anything about the police contacting her or going to contact her or asking to contact her?
No.
So why did you send her the check on November the 9th, 4 days after she didn't ask for any more money?
I don't know. And just because the check is dated November the 9th does not mean I sent it to her on November the 9th.
I understand that. I think we've agreed, because of the numbers and so forth, that it is November the 9th, 2000, even though it doesn't say that. And now I'll show you the back of the check. Here it is, endorsed by Susan. And if we can rotate that slightly so I can read it. There we go. Thank you. I'll read it for the record. This is the back of the check. Well, I love you, Bobby. Thank you so much. I'll pay every penny. I'm sorry, I can't read the rest of that. And then Susan Berman endorsed. Was this back in the day when you actually got your canceled checks in your statement?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Lewin asked you about when you found Susan's body and your attempts to use a telephone. I want to show a couple of photographs that are in evidence, crime scene photographs. We can have those of the bedroom, please. On the screen is a photograph that Mr. Henderson will tell us what number it is.
It's in the 31 series.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
It's in the 31 series.
31 series.
I have several photographs marked 31 collectively.
There's both a white, or maybe two white books and white telephone. When Mr. Lewin asked you about it first, he asked you about what's that white thing on the floor. You said you didn't know. Obviously, that's a telephone, isn't it? The other white thing.
The telephone is off the hook, and somehow during the proceedings that we've had, it was impressed upon me that that book is the same as the books on the bookcase.
Okay. In fact, if you look very closely at it, it's one volume of a Webster's dictionary, and the rest of the books in that bookcase, and perhaps the one underneath the one that's showing is Webster's dictionary. So you can see that now after looking at it closely.
Yes.
All right. I want to concentrate, though, on the phone that's off the hook. Mr. Durst, you testified that you thought you used the phone on the desk. Is it possible that this is the phone that you actually used when you tried to call 911?
That's the phone.
There's a close-up. It's another photograph in that same series of the receptacle for the, or the plug for the phone by the wall, and it also shows the cord of the phone unplugged. What happened when you picked up the phone?
It was dead.
And when you use the term charger, go back to the other phone, please, the other picture. When you used the term charger, what did you mean?
I need to see the other picture.
The picture of the desk? What other picture?
There was a picture of a telephone in the bedroom.
That's it?
That's it.
Yes.
Then there's another picture of a telephone on the desk.
Yes. If we can have that. There's, on the screen now is one of that same series, crime scene photographs taken by the police. And it shows a phone in a cradle and an answering machine and a fax machine with a phone. Did you try to use those, either one of those phones?
I tried to use both of them.
And were they dead?
They were dead.
All right. I'm going to jump ahead now to some testimony about Morris Black. On how many occasions, not including the occasion in which Morris Black died, did Morris Black fire the gun in the apartment in Galveston?
2.
On each of those 2 occasions, how many times did he fire the gun?
Once.
So there were, on the first occasion, he fired once?
Correct.
Is that the occasion in which he was shooting at the eviction notice?
Correct.
Was there a bullet hole in the facing of the door after that?
Yes, a bullet hole was found by a forensic, but you hire it.
Yeah, I'm going to do that in a moment, but did Morris Black say that he would repair that bullet hole? Did he apologize and say he would repair it?
He said he would fix it, yes.
May we have a picture of Morris Black's closet, please? On the screen is a photograph. Mr. Henderson will help us, I think, of that number. The jury's seen it. I'm not sure the number. At any rate, do you see those 2 white tubes in the closet?
Yeah.
Do you know what those are?
I think that was the entry to the kitchen.
No, I'm asking you about the 2 white tubes that are on the floor in the closet.
Oh, I don't know.
All right. Let's go to the pictures of the bullet hole, please. Max Courtney testified by agreement by reading his testimony in Galveston about finding a bullet hole the size of a .22 bullet in the wall that had been repaired. Do you recall that testimony?
I do.
And is that a photograph, one of the photographs that Mr. Courtney, a forensic expert, took when he went to the place where you said the bullet hole was? You understand the question?
I don't think you asked a question.
Sorry. Do you recall that Max Courtney testified that that's the bullet hole he found and the photograph that he took?
Yes.
The second time that Morris Black fired the gun in the apartment, where did the bullet go?
I don't know. I shot at the box that the microwave came in.
Did that have styrofoam and other sort of packaging in it?
Yeah.
At any rate, and I'm speaking now solely about Morris Black's use of the guns and firing in the apartment. Did that, whether there was any other thing involved also in your beliefs, did that cause you to be concerned about Morris Black being dangerous with a gun?
I was concerned he was dangerous with a gun. From the first time we went shooting, and he used a 9mm without taking into consideration that it had kickback. And he shot the gun in the apartment. I took the key away from him because I was scared.
And to put an end to that, did you buy the .22 target pistol because of Morris's dangerous conduct with the 9mm?
That's why I bought it.
On the third occasion, when Morris Black was killed, were you concerned that Morris Black, when you found Morris Black in the apartment and found that the gun had been removed from where you'd hid it?
I was panicked.
And when you and Morris Black struggled over the gun, did you attempt to prevent him from pointing the gun at you?
I attempted to push the gun, push his hand on the gun, because the barrel was not pointing at my face.
And as you did that, what happened?
The two of us, when we were both hands on one another, fell into the kitchen. I believe he tripped on the leg from the office chair.
We're getting towards the time of the break. Is this
It's a good time to take a break.
Ladies and gentlemen, do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. We'll return at 10:30. Yesterday, I received two proposed jury instructions authored by Mr. Ray, and the first one I rejected out of hand. It was about developmentally disabled witnesses. The second one, though, escaped my glance before, and now I realize it relates to memory. My first reaction was to, and I did in fact in writing, refuse that instruction. But I think it's worthy of discussion. It's complicated. I'm looking to the eyewitness identification instruction. It may be too complex for me to address it in a way that is not argumentative. So I'll welcome your input. It may really not be necessary. It may be duplicative of 226, but I want you to give it some thought, and I want to consider whether a line in 226 might reasonably accommodate that thought of distant memory. Next is that we heard a lot of testimony about Mr. Durst's medical conditions, and the proffer is that this somehow would affect his memory. So I don't know, but I want to talk with you about it, whether there should be an instruction limiting that to consideration of Mr. Durst's appearance as a witness presently, and whether it may have somehow affected his interview with Mr. Lewin, and limit it to those purposes and not, and remind the jurors that sympathy is, it seems like a bid in part for sympathy, so I might repeat the instruction about sympathy there. These are the only changes I'm thinking about making. I want you to think about it, so at the end of the day, we may address those issues. Anything else?
If we're talking about, the only, is the instruction, the one that came from Mr. Ray, the other one, when a witness testified about past events, you must consider the accuracy?
Yeah, it makes no sense. All witnesses testify about past events, but really the idea that there's testimony about distant events, to speak about it generally, it maybe is to exaggerate the significance of that. And in fact, the ability to remember and recall is already in 226. That already covers this subject. Let's just talk about whether any more is necessary and how I can avoid confusion, because there are multiple factors that would affect distant memory.
Our position, and it won't change, is going to be that this is not an issue that jurors don't have understanding of. People understand that these events occurred at X time. They understand who Mr. Durst is. They've heard the testimony. There is no need for any additional instruction. It is what it is.
You may be right, and I just think I want to be open-minded about this. If this is a request for an instruction, it's based in part of some evidence that was presented by the defense, and I want to think about it and make a decision at the end of the day. All right, recess.